Hi, scholars. We are ready to continue our work with Poppy today. I hope everything went well on yesterday's quiz on chapters 11 through 14, and that you remember we left off in chapter 14 where Poppy found out at Newhouse the thing that maybe Mr. Oakix didn't want her to know about. She spotted an owl twice the size of Mr. Oakix. What a great cliffhanger for us before that quiz. But now we get to continue. Chapter 15, Alone Again. Aerith moaned softly. Isn't that the most luscious thing in the whole world? He asked, gazing at the salt lick. Poppy, whose eyes were fixed on the enormous owl, could hardly speak. It's awful, she barely squeaked. So do you understand? They're each talking about something different, right? They don't realize it. Aerith turned to her. What are you saying? He demanded. Look, cried Poppy, trembling, as she pointed to the owl on the barn. Aerith turned, looked. Never noticed that before, he grunted. In wonder, Poppy murmured, Mr. Oakix is only half that size. Aerith shrugged, then went back to gazing at the salt. Well, girl, he said, have you figured out how you're going to get that salt for me? Poppy, still in a state of shock, managed only to shake her head. Aerith took one last loving look at the salt and turned. You know where to find me, he said. Don't let me down. With that, he began to waddle away. Aerith, Poppy cried, her fearful trance broken. Wait! The porcupine peered around peevishly. What now? He grumbled. You aren't just leaving me here, are you? What else am I supposed to do? Help me, Poppy said in a small voice. Poppy, we made a deal. I'd get you here, you'd get me that salt. I've done my part. Now you do yours. But... No buts, Aerith snapped, lashing his tail in irritation. Poppy backed away. I'm going home now, but I'll be waiting. With a final glare, he said, Keep your promise, furball, and marched off. Poppy started to run after him, but tripped on something and fell flat. When she got up, Aerith had disappeared among the corn. An unhappy Poppy dusted herself off. It was then that she noted what had tripped her. It was one of Aerith's tail quills. When he'd flounced his tail, it had fallen out. Poppy picked the quill up gingerly. She'd never really looked at one closely before. It was mostly black and made of long, fused hair, just as Aerith had said. One end was blunt. The other end, the sharp end, was ivory white. With fascination, Poppy examined the tiny barbs. The point, which she was unable to resist touching, was frightfully sharp. She was about to toss the quill away when she had an idea. Grasping it by its blunt end, she swished it about a few times. It moved nicely. Like a sword. Poppy found a tall blade of grass, plucked it, and tied it around her waist in a sash-like fashion. With care, she slid the quill under this belt. It fit comfortably. Then she drew the quill out a few times to see if it came free easily. Though a single quill was not the full arsenal that Aerith carried, it was something. She only hoped she'd never have to use it. So the full arsenal, right? Arsenal being like all the weaponry, right? Aerith has a lot more of those quills, so his arsenal of those is much bigger than her one single quill. Did anyone think about the cover? Right, now you know what that is that she's holding on the cover of our book. Reluctantly, Poppy turned her attention back to the enormous owl on the barn. The bird had not moved, but was still sitting on its perch, gazing off into the distance with huge eyes. Poppy was relieved it had not turned her way. The realization that at any moment the owl might turn and discover her made Poppy retreat into the corn, but not so far that she'd be able to peer out. Once hidden, she tried to make sense of her situation. It was all very well to have reached Newhouse, but now that she'd arrived, she still had no real clue to why Mr. Okix would not permit them to move here. All she had seen was this huge owl. Could his reason have something to do with that? Poppy tried to think it through. An owl of this size would be ferocious. Perhaps Mr. Okix was worried that this bird would steal his food. It certainly would eat a lot. The truth was, and Poppy forced herself to acknowledge it, this huge owl made moving here impossible. Mr. Okix was bad enough. This owl looked twice as bad. Then Poppy had a new thought. Was Mr. Okix really trying to protect her family? Had she been wrong about him all along? But then, perhaps this owl was not really living here at Newhouse. Simply because she was seeing it now proved nothing. It could be passing through, perhaps just spending the night. The sun was up now. Poppy decided she had best settle in and wait to see what, if anything, happened. And that, scholars, is the end of chapter 15.